Yep.
And to me, it's just the most incredible place in the world. It's the most incredible experiment. Like, we have kids who are retarded here that are millionaires. Like, we win. You can be someone who is mentally ill and be a millionaire. Name another country that's possible. There are streamers on the internet that are mentally retarded.
Yes.
And they're millionaires. What the is that not amazing? Like, is that not mind-blowing?
Yeah.
Only in America.
Oh, yeah.
You got some of that tism that your friend talked about.
Bro.
Patrick Bet David is on a hiring spree. On the latest episode of his podcast, he dropped one of the biggest flexes to date, offering YouTube comedian Andrew Schulz a late-night show as part of a $500 million investment into setting up a media company to compete with the likes of Jimmy Fallon, Stephen Colbert, and Jimmy Kimmel. Except it doesn't quite make sense. So stick around for my full breakdown. But not only that, on the same episode, Andrew dropped one of his biggest Schulz epiphanies to date in his attempt to sound smart and fit in with the PBD crew.
If you control the carrot, you control the culture.
Yeah, our boy Schulz just discovered capitalism. What was that about millionaires on the internet? But listen, you may have heard recently that PBD hired disgraced TV puppet Chris Cuomo to join his Valuetainment brand and start creating content on his platform. So I'll go through the controversy towards the end of this video and show you a few interesting facts and figures that led to Fredo joining PBD's Valuetainment grift. For now, though, let's take a look at this $500 million media company that PBD wants to create and hire Andrew Schulz to head up a new late-night talk show.
If I wanted to, do a late-night show with any guy, and I'm going to keep saying this until this happens. There's two guys I love.
I like
two
it.
guys.
Okay.
I think the other guy's going to do something. I think he's going to go a different direction than you. I think you're more versatile, that you can talk a lot of different topics, but I think that guy's also going to do something. Marcelo S.D.N.Y, I'm a big fan of him.
Marcelo's great.
But for you, hey, if I were to put $500 million into a media company to want to have a late night show, I would probably spend 20% of it and sign a guy to do a late night show, bring writers, bring a team, and have that guy compete against the Fallon, the Kimmel, all those guys, and I think you would kill it, bro.
Up my man.
I think you would kill it.
And I would watch it.
Bro, I would come and watch. I'd be sitting there saying, I'm going to be sitting there watching it. So
maybe we got to make something happen.
Maybe we got to make something happen.
Maybe we got to make something.
But since
that space could be taken over quite easily.
100%.
Yeah.
I think 100% that space can be taken.
Okay, oh my God, here we go. First thing, let's just forget for a moment that PBD doesn't have $500 million to throw at a media company. In fact, I doubt he even has $5 million. His whole life is leased or on credit cards. I mean, PBD's the kind of guy to do a house tour on a rental property. Secondly, let's say he did set up his $500 million media company. On what network is he going to run this talk show? Like, does he really know what he's saying? If he's going to compete in that space, he'd have to buy an existing TV network to broadcast all of these shows. And that takes me to my next point. He already has a media company. It's a YouTube channel called Valuetainment, where he pays for his guests, probably with borrowed money, and has also been accused of buying views, likes, and comments. But here's the thing. Here's some free advice for the big man. There already are a bunch of competitors to the late night talk shows. Have you heard of Joe Rogan, Theo Von, Tim Dillon, Bad Friends, YMH Studios, etc., etc.? Oh, and don't forget, have you heard of Flagrant? See, there are these things called comedy podcasts that already compete with the establishment talk shows like Jimmy Kimmel, Colbert, and Jimmy Fallon. Schulz is already doing it. So why would you set up a $500 million media company with money you don't have to enter an industry that's already been overtaken by lower cost, higher retention, more profitable podcasts with much lower barriers to entry? And if you needed more proof that PBD is talking complete BS to flex in front of Schulz, take a look at this next clip. After Schulz explained how his parents met, PBD asks him how much influence his childhood has had on his own life after recently becoming a father himself. And in a few short words, PBD exposes his lack of knowledge about just how late-night talk shows really work.
How much of what the way he raised you and they raised you are you planning on using on the way you raise your kids?
I mean, as much as I can. Yeah. Like, I'm trying to keep those things. Like, I'm at home at 6 o'clock every day when I'm in town, and hopefully that'll be our little dinner dinner situation, hang in, plug in. And
So
then,
late night not going to work.
well, when she goes to bed, when my daughter goes to bed, that's when I'll go out and do shows.
When she goes to bed, then you go out there and do shows.
Yeah.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah, yeah.
That's cool.
Whoops, did PBD not realize in his infinite wisdom that late night talk shows are recorded during the day? Did nobody tell him they're not live? Come on, surely someone willing to throw $100 million at Andrew Schulz to run a talk show knows that it's all pre-recorded, just like a podcast. Maybe it's because PBD live streams most of his own podcast and just assume that's how it works for all media. Anyway, after all this talk show talk, Schulz decided to share one of his epiphanies about how capitalism works, which he came up with after his interview last week with RFK Jr. on Flagrant. Now, when you're watching this, just remember, this is the condensed version.
We had RFK on the pod, right?
Yeah,
Have you guys
yeah.
spoken to
Of
RFK?
course,
Yeah.
yeah.
A charming guy, really charming. And he said something on the pod that was a joke. It wasn't a joke, it was serious, but it was meant in like a laughing way, right? And he basically is talking about, because I asked him about, hanging out with Epstein. And he goes, listen, you understand, I'm in New York at this time. He goes, I had Bill Cosby at my house. I had OJ at my house. I had Harvey Weinstein. He goes through the gambit of the worst people on purpose. He's trying to show, look how many awful people were in my life. Instead of these Hollywood phonies that go, oh my God, Harvey Weinstein, how could you even be with him? And then all of them have pictures sucking his dick on the red carpet for a decade.
Right. On their knees. Yeah.
Exactly. And he goes, and then you find out these people are swamp creatures and they're just absolutely disgusting.
Yep.
Fallon does a joke and they just take the section where he talks about the people, Weinstein, OJ, whatever. And then he does it, oh my God, who else were you hanging out with? Jeffrey Dahmer, blah, blah, blah. A few nights later, Colbert does the same joke, right? And you see it, and they're both leaving out the context that he's like, hey, this is, how crazy is that this can happen? You can hang out with these awful people because you're in this social scene, you don't even know it, right? That's the context, right? But they leave out the context of everything. And I'm watching this and I'm like, I see how people could think that there is a conspiracy going on. When you see this information, you see the same joke written twice. There's only 3 late night shows. They should be aware of the jokes that are kind of being made based off the same clip taken out of context. You're like, oh my God, there's a conspiracy. But I think sometimes laziness presents itself as conspiracy. The laziness is there are these writers, right? That they know they just need to get jokes on in order to, continue their life, right? They got to chase the path of least resistance to make money, to provide for their families, right? They don't love that job. They're not passionate about writing knock jokes for Fallon or any of the other late night hosts. It's not their desire. A lot of them probably started as comedians, stand-up comedians. They want to be out there touring and doing that. This is what pays the bills, protects their family. That's awesome. You don't need a nefarious group of people to create assets out of every single politician and lobby every single group if you can control the path of least resistance. That's the thing that scares me, right? I think that's the TikTok concern. If you control the carrot, you control the culture.
Yes.
For example, movies in China. Hollywood knows if you get a movie in China, they take 10 a year. If you get a movie in China, that movie's making crazy money, right? So now all of a sudden, Taiwan isn't going to ever be mentioned in a movie because you want to make sure it meets the Chinese standards. They are dangling the carrot, creating the path of least resistance, and then affecting culture. And I feel like that's one of the things. Capitalism is the best system, no question, without the best thing that we got. But it was developed at a time where we were the ones consuming everything. We were the biggest consumers. Now you got some other money out there. And if the only thing driving us is capital, we can be manipulated by those sources out there that have the capital.
Wow, that's so insightful. At the ripe old age of 40 years old, Andrew Schulz just figured out that the guys with the deepest pockets have the loudest voices. Incredible. But let me just say one thing here, right? A lot of people don't realize this. During the pandemic, Andrew Schulz released a series of videos on social media that were basically like short talk show monologues where he'd address current issues and events and make jokes about them. Now, Schulz has openly said and explained that he had a team of writers behind him pumping out all of those jokes. So for him to sit there and criticize writers on late-night talk shows for towing the company line, well, that's precisely how he got famous during the pandemic. I'll tell you what, that's the height of hypocrisy, even for a guy like Schulz.
You can be someone who is mentally ill and be a millionaire. Name another country where that's possible.
And so the circle jerk continued. After Schulz educated the panel with his momentary glimpse into the machinations of a capitalist society, they began to hatch a plan to appeal to the masses. And just in case you needed a reminder, don't forget about what Schulz did to his fans with his independently released comedy special when PBD craps on about how Schulz has values and principles.
I'm a big fan of yours. I'm very excited and curious to know what you do next 20 years because I think you're an intellect and you're entertaining, and there's values and principles. Holy shit, that's a great combo.
Triple threat.
So, meaning the upside of the influence, I want to see what a late night, if we have a late night that's being ran by a guy like Andrew and people are watching it, logic will sink in as long as he can have the influence over the writers, as long as I'm not writing this, I'm not writing this, no, I'm not saying this, no, guys, can we, is this true? Is this really happening? Can you Google it? No, I don't, that's not what he said. Let me play the whole clip. Okay, no, I'm not with this. If we have to compete with culture, right? Because if you let it be the way it is right now, you're talking about Fallon and Kimmel and Colbert, and they're saying what they're saying. Like, no, this is not going to work out. So that's why I'm curious to know what you're going to be doing next 20.
Especially if there's no directive, that there's nobody on top saying, like Andrew, you can't say this, don't, that cannot be infiltrated at all. It's like, listen, we're going to be funny and speak the fact.
Okay. So you're telling me that PBD is going to sink $500 million of monopoly money into a media company and have no editorial oversight of the content they produce? Oh, that's great. Forget about PBD's politics for a minute. I just love how guys like him think that they can remain completely objective and only speak facts and wouldn't fall into the same traps as the mainstream media. But speaking of mainstream media, look what happened to Chris Cuomo. He got fired from CNN for lying to his employer and to his audience about the extent of his involvement in his brother's media campaign. Remember how his brother Andrew Cuomo was the governor of New York and ended up having to resign back in 2021 over allegations of assault and harassment that were lodged against him? Well, apparently Mr. CNN was doing groundwork for his brother behind the scenes while he was still working for CNN. So after he was fired, he went out and tried to do his own thing on YouTube, except nobody watched. Take a look at some of his latest videos. This is the guy who was banking over $6 million a year working for CNN, and now he's getting Brendan Schaub numbers on YouTube. I think a lot of these guys don't realize that without a big network behind you, nobody's going to follow you. And that's definitely one of the reasons why he ended up taking the deal with PBD.
Cuomo's right now with News Nation, and he's enjoying it on the cable side, right?
I thought he's coming here.
No, non-cable is with us. Okay. Cable, he's with News Nation. We're not interested. We're not competing cable. So cable, you do whatever you want to do. Cable, on the non-cable stuff, you're going to see him a lot more involved here, stuff that we're doing, because this guy's going to be voting for Trump. So we need somebody else that we can be talking to. And
we need some more lefties around here.
There you go. Fair and balanced, hey? Who better than Chris Cuomo and Adam Sosnick to keep each other honest?
They're streamers on the internet.
Yeah.
That are mentally retarded.
Yes.
And they're millionaires.
And speaking of millionaires, Chris Cuomo took a massive pay cut going from CNN to News Nation, where he reportedly earns around $1 million a year, which is $5 million less per year than he was earning at CNN. So it kind of makes sense that he would sign up with PBD to earn some extra cash, just to earn a few extra dollars and make up for his losses. But PBD supporters are not happy about this. The comment section on his podcast are full of people trashing Cuomo, and it's funny because the first video I ever made on this very channel covered Chris Cuomo's appearance on the PBD podcast last year, where PBD sucked up to him the whole time and made a new bestie. For some reason, PBD seems to be obsessed with these establishment figures who come from powerful families. I honestly think he was just so starstruck by Cuomo when he first met him that he saw an opportunity to sign him up just so he can say that he employed one of the Cuomo brothers. Anyway, it'll be interesting to see what kind of content Chris comes out with on Valuetainment. I'm sure it'll be cringy as hell and give us plenty of material to point and laugh at. Let's just hope Schulz doesn't get sucked into PBD's circle, and I actually don't think he will. He seems like he's just entertaining his delusions to be friendly and doesn't mind a bit of the old ego stroking, Schulz has it made over on Flagrant and Brilliant Idiots. He's making a killing off of podcasting and comedy tours, not to mention grifting off of his audience with his independent comedy specials. But look, stay tuned. If you're not a regular of this channel, hit the subscribe button, drop a comment below, let me know what you think about all of this. That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
You can be someone who is mentally ill and be a millionaire. Name another country where that's possible. Is that not amazing? Like, is that not mind-blowing?